old summer camp was reopening after 20 years of closure. A group of caretakers was hired to clean it up before the next season, but on the first night, they found names carved into every cabin wall. Names of kids who had attended decades ago. Each morning, one of those names was scratched out, and one caretaker went missing. By the final night, only one remained. He heard children laughing outside, their shadows dancing in the moonlight. He ran to the gate, but the sign now read, "Welcome, campers. Summer begins June 13th, 1985. And when he looked down, he was wearing a camp uniform. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're looking for a cozy campfire story, you might want to click away now, because today, we're venturing into the shadows of Camp Hollow, a place where the trees whisper secrets and the darkness holds other things. Trust me, you're not ready for this. Picture this. It was the summer of 2003. 5 of us, Sarah, Mike, Chloe, Ben, and I, fresh out of high school, decided to celebrate our freedom with one last epic camping trip. And where better than the infamous Camp Hollow? Locals called it cursed, a place where campers vanished, and strange noises echoed through the night. Of course, we, being young and foolish, just saw it as the ultimate thrill. We set up camp deep in the woods, far from any other sights. Just as dusk began to bleed into the sky, the air grew cold. A thick mist started rolling in, and that's when the feeling started. That feeling of being watched. As we gathered around a crackling fire, sharing ghost stories and laughing a little too loudly to mask our nerves, something shifted. A twig snapped, not in the distance, but right behind our tents. We all froze. Ben, always the brave one, grabbed a flashlight and ventured into the encroaching darkness. He didn't find anything, but when he returned, his face was pale. He swore he saw 2 pinpricks of red light staring back from the dense undergrowth, just for a second, before they vanished. We tried to shake it off, blaming it on shadows and overactive imaginations, but the easy laughter was gone. The forest suddenly felt heavier, pressing in on us. Later that night, the real terror began. I woke up to a faint scratching sound coming from asterisk inside asterisk our tent. My heart hammered against my ribs. I nudged Mike. Awake. He listened, then slowly, cautiously, unzipped the tent flap. What we saw made my blood run cold. Just outside, clinging to the mesh of the tent, was a human hand. Not a whole person, just a severed, pale hand. Its fingers slowly scraping across the fabric, as if trying to get in. We screamed. Mike scrambled back, knocking over his sleeping bag. The hand disappeared as quickly as it came, leaving behind only a faint, sickly sweet smell. We spent the rest of the night huddled together, too terrified to move. Morning brought a false sense of relief. The sun cut through the mist, making the trees look almost normal. We tried to convince ourselves it was a prank, a sick joke by some local. But then Chloe noticed something disturbing. Her backpack, which had been securely zipped, was now slightly ajar. Inside, all her photos, our smiling faces from before the trip, were gone, replaced by a single, old, faded photograph of a group of children, their eyes blacked out, standing in front of what looked unmistakably like our very own campsite. A chill snicked down my spine. This wasn't a prank. This was a warning. We decided to pack up and leave immediately, but as we tried to start our car, nothing happened. The engine wouldn't turn over. Panic set in. We were stranded. With cell service non-existent, our only option was to hike out. As we walked, the forest seemed to twist around us, the path we came in on vanishing. The trees grew taller, their branches clawing at the sky. Then, we heard it, a faint, childlike giggle echoing through the woods, followed by a low, guttural growl that sounded distinctly inhuman. It seemed to come from all directions, encircling USA. We started to run, pushing through thick bushes and tangled roots, desperate to escape. That's when Sarah tripped. As she fell, she cried out, her eyes wide with terror. From the ground, barely visible beneath the fallen leaves, was a small, ornate wooden doll. Its eyes were tiny, black beads, and it seemed to stare right through us. But the horror wasn't the doll itself. It was what surrounded it, a circle of fresh, still steaming blood, outlining the toy. And in the center of the doll's forehead, a single strand of Sarah's own red hair was intricately woven into the wood. The giggling intensified, closer now, and the growl became a chilling, drawn-out moan. We didn't wait. We didn't help Sarah up. We just ran, pure adrenaline pumping through our veins, the sounds of Camp Hollow chasing us, promising never to let us leave. We don't know what happened to Sarah, or if we ever truly escaped. We just ran until the forest finally opened up to a deserted highway. To this day, the nightmares are vivid, the memories sharp. Camp Hollow isn't just a place on a map, it's a place that lives inside you. Every summer, the same ice cream truck drove through the neighborhood. Its cheerful song echoed through the long, hot evenings. But this year, the truck came after midnight, and the driver wore a cracked, plastic smile mask. Kids who bought from him were found sleepwalking days later, whispering the truck's jingle in their sleep. One boy followed the truck into the woods at night. Only his phone was found recording the jingle slowing down, distorted, until a whisper said, "You're melting too." The next morning, his shoes were found at the end of the melted ice cream trail. The jingle, ... you know the one. That tinny, cheerful tune that drifts on a hot summer breeze. For most people, it brings back memories of sticky fingers, melting popsicles, and chasing a colorful truck down the block. For me, it's the soundtrack to a nightmare. It's the sound of something that took my best friend, and almost took me. It started like any other summer in our sleepy suburban town. I was 10. My best friend, Leo, lived right across the street. Our days were a blur of scraped knees, tree climbing, and waiting. Waiting for that sound. The ice cream truck in our neighborhood wasn't like the others. It was old, a little rusted, and the paint was peeling in strange, almost organic patterns. The driver was a gaunt figure we only ever saw as a silhouette behind the grimy serving window. He never spoke, just handed out the ice cream. But the ice cream... oh. The ice cream was magical, flavors you'd never heard of. Colors that seemed too vibrant, too alive. One afternoon, the truck rolled to a stop right between our houses. The jingles seemed slower today, warped. Leo and I ran out, clutching our allowance. I got my usual, a scoop of something called Starlight Swirl, which tasted like spun sugar and ozone. Leo, always adventurous, pointed to a new flavor. A deep, unsettling crimson ice cream simply labeled Crimson Peak. The driver's shadowy hand pushed it through the window. Leo took one lick, and his eyes went wide. He said it tasted like memories, like his happiest day ever, all in one bite. He became obsessed. Every day, he had to have Crimson Peak. He started changing. The bright, energetic Leo the first knew began to fade. He grew pale, quiet. His eyes, once full of life, became distant, as if he was looking at something far away that only he could see. He'd just sit on his porch, staring down the empty street, waiting for the truck. He stopped playing with me. He just wanted the ice cream. I tried to talk to him, to tell him something was wrong. Ekusta smiled a hollow, empty smile, and said I wouldn't understand. He said the ice cream showed him wonderful things. I started to get scared. I noticed the truck was coming more often, and only for Leo. The jingle would play, and he'd walk towards it like he was in a trance. The last time I saw him, it was dusk. The sky was bruised, purple, and orange. The truck pulled up, its jingle a distorted, moaning dirt. I watched from my window, my heart pounding. Leo walked out, But this time he didn't have any money. He just stood there. The serving window slid open, revealing not a shadow, but complete, utter blackness. A void that seemed to drink the last of the daylight. A long, pale hand, impossibly thin, reached out. It wasn't holding ice cream. It beckoned. And Leo, he just smiled that vacant smile and climbed inside. The window slid shut. The truck didn't drive away. It just faded. One moment it was there, a solid shape against the dying light, and the next, it was gone. The music cut off, plunging the street into a terrifying silence. Leo was gone. The police came. My parents questioned me. No one believed me. An old, rusty ice cream truck that vanishes, a flavor that steals your memories. They said Leo must have run away, but I know what I saw. I know what took him. Years have passed. I'm an adult now. I moved away from that town, trying to escape the memory. But sometimes, on a hot summer night, I think I hear it, faintly, on the edge of hearing. A tinny, warped jingle drifting on the wind, and a cold dread washes over me, because I know the truck is still out there. It's still driving, still searching for new customers. So if you ever hear that cheerful tune, and you see an old, rusted truck roll down your street, I'm begging you, run. Don't look at the flavors. Don't listen to the music. Just run. Because some treats aren't worth the price. Thanks for listening to my story. If you felt that chill down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. On the last day before closing, a lifeguard stayed late to clean the pool. He saw ripples moving even though the water was still. Then he noticed a shape at the bottom, a small body. He dove in, heart racing, but when he touched it, it dissolved into black water. That night, he checked the pool cameras. They showed him talking to someone sitting on the diving board all afternoon. Someone who never appeared on camera before that day. The next morning, when the manager opened the pool, the water was red, and the lifeguard's whistle floated in the middle. Intro music fades slightly. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're into chilling tales that make you question what's real, then you're in for a treat today. Grab a blanket, maybe turn on a few extra lights, because we're diving into the lifeguard's shift. This isn't your average summer splash story. It's a deep dive into something far more unsettling. Stick around, because the waters are about to get very, very dark. Our story starts with a young lifeguard named Alec, who just landed his dream summer job at the historic Oakhaven community pool. It wasn't just any pool. Locals whispered about its eerie past, strange disappearances, and an unsettling cold spot near the deep end, even on the hottest days. Alex, a practical guy, brushed it off as local folklore. His first few shifts were routine shouting at kids running on the deck, bandaging scraped knees, and watching the water shimmering under the summer sun. But then, things started to change. One sweltering Tuesday, as the last families packed up, Alex noticed something odd. A child's bright red ball, previously floating near the shallow end, was now slowly submerging in the deep end, completely on its own. No current, no ripple, just a steady, deliberate sink. Alex felt a shiver, despite the heat. He knew he'd seen it before, just days ago. A small toy frog doing the exact same thing. He chalked it up to strange pool currents, retrieved the ball, and locked up, feeling a knot of unease form in his stomach. The next evening, during his solo closing shift, the air grew thick and heavy. The usual, cheerful echoes of children's laughter had been replaced by an unsettling silence. As Alex walked the perimeter, checking the gates, he heard a faint, almost imperceptible splash from the deep end. He hurried back, expecting to find a lost animal or a prankster. But the pool was empty, the water still, reflecting the dim safety lights. Yet there, at the bottom of the deep end, nestled amongst the painted lines, was a single, tiny, porcelain doll, its eyes wide and glassy, staring straight up. Alex's heart pounded. He hadn't seen it there before, and the pool had been crystal clear just minutes ago. How could it have appeared, perfectly placed, without a sound. He quickly fished it out, a cold dread washing over him, and tossed it into the nearest bin. Later that week, the strange occurrences escalated. Alex was in the lifeguard tower, overseeing an empty pool during a brief break. He was scrolling on his phone when a flash of movement caught his eye in the periphery. A load up, and for a split second, he saw it. A pale, gaunt figure, standing at the very edge of the deep end. His breath hitched. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, but it was gone. The water was perfectly calm. He tried to rationalize it, exhaustion, a trick of the light, but his pulse hammered against his ribs. This was no trick. The hairs on his arms stood on end. He started to wonder if the old tales weren't just stories after all. The fears solidified when Alex found himself alone again, doing the final chemical checks. The floodlights cast long, distorted shadows across the empty deck. He was by the pump room when a guttural, wet gurgling sound echoed from the deep end. It sounded like someone struggling for air underwater. He sprinted back, heart pounding, adrenaline surging, but there was nothing. The water was still. He swore he could feel a presence, a heavy, suffocating weight in the air around the deep end. And then, the faint outline of a hand, barely visible, pressed against the opaque blue tiling at the bottom of the deep end, right where the drain was. It seemed to pulse, almost beckoning. He yelled a raw, desperate sound, and the hand vanished, leaving only ripples in its wake. He knew then he wasn't alone in the pool, and whatever was there wanted to be seen. On his final shift, the pool was unusually quiet. A storm was brewing, and the sky was a bruised purple. Alex was jumpy, his senses on high alert. He heard the faint sound of children laughing and splashing, even though the pool was deserted. It seemed to come from the deep end, echoing as if from within the water itself. He walked cautiously to the edge, peering into the murky depths as the storm clouds gathered overhead. Just then, a huge crack of thunder split the sky, and the pool lights flickered, plunging the area into near darkness for a terrifying second. When they came back on, the entire surface of the deep end was a turbulent, frothing whirlpool, as if an unseen force was churning it from below. And in the very center, for a terrifying, heart-stopping instant, Alex saw a face. Not a child's face, but something ancient, distorted, with eyes that held an infinite, chilling hunger. The whirlpool subsided as quickly as it began, leaving the water still once more, but Alex felt a cold, skeletal hand grasp his ankle from the water, dragging him towards the edge. He screamed, pulling away with all his might, scrambling backward, his heart threatening to explode from his chest. He didn't look back. He ran, tearing out of the pool, grabbing his bag, and didn't stop until he was miles away, never returning to Oakhaven Pool again. Some places are just meant to be left undisturbed. A couple rented a lakeside cabin to spend their last summer weekend together. The cabin had one rule: don't open the cellar door after dark. But on the final night, they heard someone crying beneath the floorboards. Thinking it was an animal, they opened it, revealing a staircase leading nowhere. The sound grew louder, turning into screams. When they tried to escape, every door opened to the same sunset view, looping endlessly. Days later, new guests arrived. The owner smiled and handed them the keys, saying, "Don't worry, the last couple already checked out. They're still here somewhere." The old logging road was barely a ghost of a path, swallowed by the encroaching forest. Every bump and jolt of my car sent a shiver of unease up my spine, a feeling I tried to dismiss as just pre-vacation jitters. The invitation from my estranged uncle had been a surprise. A handwritten note talking about reconciliation, about mending bridges at his new home, the cabin at Sunset Point. It sounded idyllic, peaceful. I couldn't have been more wrong. The cabin materialized from the twilight mist like a forgotten memory. It was older than I'd imagined, built from dark, heavy logs that seemed to absorb the fading light. A single, amber-colored lamp glowed in one window, a lonely beacon in the vast wilderness. My uncle, a man I hadn't seen since I was a child, stood on the porch. He was thinner, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, but his smile was just as I remembered it, wide and I now realized. Unsettlingly vacant. "Welcome," he said, his voice a dry rustle of leaves. "I'm so glad you came." Inside, the air was thick with the smell of pine, wood smoke, and something else. Something metallic and faintly sweet. The cabin was a single large room, cluttered with antique furniture and taxidermy animals, whose glass eyes seemed to follow my every move. He offered me a seat in a worn armchair by the crackling fireplace. The warmth did little to chase away the chill that had settled deep in my bones. He spoke of the past, of regrets, his words rambling and disconnected, his eyes never quite meeting mine. He kept glancing towards a heavy oak door at the far end of the room, a door secured with a large, rusty padlock. Curiosity gnawed at me. "What's in there, Uncle?" I asked, pointing towards the locked door. His smile faltered for a fleeting moment. A flicker of raw panic crossed his face before being replaced by that same empty grin. "Just storage," he said, a little too quickly. "Old things. Forgotten things. Best left alone." But his answer only deepened my suspicion. The way he guarded that door, the way his gaze kept darting towards it. It wasn't just storage, it was a secret. And the feeling that I was not a guest, but an ingredient in some terrible recipe, began to take root. Later that evening, after a tense dinner where my uncle barely ate, he announced he was turning in. "Make yourself at home," he said, his smile looking more like a grimace in the firelight. "But do not, under any circumstances, try to open that door." His warning hung in the air, heavy and absolute. I waited, listening to the floorboards creak above me as he moved around in the loft, until finally, silence descended. Silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the frantic beating of my own heart. The door called to me. The secret behind it pulsed like a dark, hidden heart in the quiet cabin. I couldn't resist. My hands trembled as I approached the locked door. I examined the padlock. It was old, but sturdy. I rummaged through a dusty toolbox I found near the hearth, my fingers closing around a rusty crowbar. The sound of the metal lock breaking was deafening in the stillness. It snapped with a loud crack, and the heavy door groaned open, releasing a wave of cold, musty air that smelled of damp earth and decay. I peered into the darkness, my phone's flashlight cutting a nervous beam through the gloom. It was a small, windowless room, the walls lined with crude wooden shelves. At first, I saw nothing but jars, dozens of them filled with murky, preserved things. But then my light fell upon a collection of photo albums stacked on a small table. I picked one up, the leather cover cold and clammy to the touch. I opened it. The first page held a faded picture of a smiling family in front of this very cabin. But the faces... Someone had meticulously scratched them out with a sharp object, leaving behind a chaotic web of angry lines. I flipped the page. More familias, more couples, all posing happily at Sunset Point. And in every single photo, the faces were violently erased. Obliterated. My blood ran cold. These were the previous visitors, the ones my uncle had mentioned in his letters. The ones who came seeking peace and never left. My flashlight beam danced across the shelves, and I finally saw what was in the jars. They weren't animal specimens or preserved fruits. They were personal effects. A locket, a child's worn teddy bear, a pair of glasses. Each jar was a tiny, liquid tomb for a memory, a life. My uncle wasn't a recluse. He was a collector of people. He didn't just want to mend bridges. He wanted to add me to his grotesque collection. A floorboard creaked above me. He was awake. He knew. Panic seized me. I dropped the album and bolted from the room, from the cabin, not even bothering to close the door behind me. I scrambled into my car, my hands fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life just as the cabin door flew open, silhouetting my uncle's frame against the warm light. He wasn't smiling anymore. His face was a mask of pure, predatory rage. He held something in his hand, a long, gleaming object that caught the porch light. I didn't wait to see what it was. I slammed the car into reverse and sped away, the tires screaming on the gravel, not daring to look back. I drove all night. The horrifying images from that room burned into my mind. The scratched out faces, the jars, the cold, vacant smile of my uncle. I never stopped. Not until the sun was high in the sky and the dark forest was hundreds of miles behind me. I never told the police. What could I say? That my uncle collects photos and old trinkets. They would think I was crazy. But I know what I saw. I know that the cabin at Sunset Point is not a sanctuary. It's a trap, and he's still out there, waiting in the woods, waiting for his next guest to arrive. So if you ever receive an unexpected invitation to a remote, peaceful cabin, just keep driving.